Somebody's gonna die tonight. And I can't wait.
Welcome, everybody, to a very special VSW Presents Horror Nights. I'm your host, Versace Stone. I got with you Victor Sin and our special guest of the evening. Very good, in my opinion, good director and actor, the one and only Fred Vogel. Welcome to the show.
What's happening?
You know, I think people, for the most part, if they know, they know they've been watching your movies for something 20 odd years now.
It's crazy to think that, I made August Underground in 2001. So for people to still be, talking about that movie and continuing to follow my career is pretty awesome.
You know how I'll be honest, you know how I found it is because, I watch a lot of reels on, Facebook and stuff, and they were doing these, icebergs of, dark horror movies.
Yeah.
And, me being a fan, I'm a fan of Cannibal Ferox, Cannibal Holocaust, all these films. I started seeing I started seeing August Underground, third or fourth tear down on this thing. And I'm like, well, I got to check this out. And if it's mainstream, then I can at least find it. And I was able to find it, via a few streaming sites. And then I actually ended up just going to Amazon and buying all three of that whole trilogy. So it got the Blu-ray, the DVD. I'm a very physical media person.
Oh, yeah.
Streaming is great, but I like to also own a copy.
Absolutely. I, too, am a physical media guy. I have a nice collection myself. It's anytime you want to watch it, it's there, and you get all those special features and, it's you're only.
I like this. I'm there just for the slipcovers half of the time, honestly. Cool artwork. I'll buy it. But looking back at that film, you were in that film. You started, you put yourself in that film. You played the lead character, the killer.
Yeah.
Obviously, much younger, different time. But was that your first film? Had you done any filming prior to that?
Oh, it was my first feature film. I was making movies in college with buddies and things like that, like little films on the weekends. And that August Underground was my first feature film.
And what inspired you? Were you into the killer scene, the serial killer, the portrait of a Henry scene? What was the kind of motivation of putting out such a violent film from that perspective?
So I've been a fan of horror my whole life. So and special effects. So at the time that I made August Underground, I was actually teaching college at Tom Savini's makeup school. So I was teaching special effects makeup. And I knew that I wanted to make movies, so I was hoping that I can kind of come up with something that would, something that I can make for on the cheap, because the scripts that I was writing were just for big, zombie epics and things like that at the time. There's no way that I could afford it. And, at the time, some of my students were writing the serial killers, and I was just like, man, the serial killer culture is so intriguing, and people don't realize, what if these people, came after your family? Hollywood always shows serial killers in a positive light. And I was like, what if I made a serial killer movie that showed them a completely negative light, showed how raw and real this could be. And, maybe it would turn some heads, and at the time, nobody was really making anything found footage. It really wasn't even a genre. No,
I'm thinking 2001.
Blair Witch came out a year before. So
yeah, and people were just kind of getting hip to it. Prior to that, you did Cannibal Holocaust had been prior to that 30 years ago. There was nothing out there. No, and you make a good point, because if you even now, they did that Jeffrey Dahmer Netflix thing, and the world fell in love with Jeffrey Dahmer. They're glorifying this guy. Meanwhile, there's real victims behind it.
Oh yeah.
You didn't glorify your character. You made yourself almost extra repulsive. Between that and the camera guy just laughing at everything, just made it just
Yeah.
Like serious, it's like repulsed, which you should be. It's a serial killer doing horrendous acts with no care in the world.
Yeah. At the time when I made August Underground, um, people just didn't understand what it was. They were like, is this real? Is it fake? I don't get it. This is stupid. Like people just didn't understand like the object of the movie. And the object of the movie was to look like a personal home video of these lunatics. And if you watch, back in the day, if you watch the home video movies, the home movies kind of jump around. There's no real plot. There's no real
Nothing.
start, finish, or middle or end. They just kind of go. So, looking back at it now, it was really groundbreaking. There wasn't anything like it. And I think a lot of movies that are found footage still really try to make it a movie. Where August Underground really tries to be found footage home video.
No, like that's what I'm saying. Like, you put it in, it starts off right off the beginning, you got brutality going on in the basement, a girl's missing a breast, you got horrendous sex. There's no credit scene, there's no intro, there's no suspenseful music leading up, there's no title screen, there's no date, there's nothing. You're just watching whatever. You don't know until the end of it, to the very end, that somebody named Fred Vogel put this out as a film.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, is really cool about it, because like you said, and I don't know if this is true, but I did hear a rumor that part of the marketing event was going to be that you guys were going to like place these tapes randomly in just random places, but then with the 2001 attacks and the anthrax scares, you guys had to pull back from doing so. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. Yeah, because America was in a different place. If I would have made the movie 5 years earlier, it would have been fucking huge.
You would have scared the shit out of people, though. People,
absolutely. And that was the plan. That was the plan. But America was in such high alert at that time. Like it changed. 9/11 changed everything. It changed the way you fly on a plane. It changed the way all kinds of security is done in this country. So, right. I mean, even when August Underground was doing the early film festival circuit, I was getting flagged because people thought it was real. So it was just like,
yeah, I mean, I think that whole trilogy falls, I mean, I'll call it horror, but a lot of people will call it like pseudo snuff or whatever. They put it in that category because it does have that realistic, gritty feel. You're not watching a 4K crisp video. You're watching something very grainy, almost home handheld, shaken. Like you said, it's just jumping from what they're doing to they're doing. There's no plot. Here they're at a concert, then the next day they're fucking around here, then they're at a store, then they're here. And if you're right, you ever have a home video, a film to home video, you just film moments. You don't film, I'm going to do this and then tie it in. It's just random moments that you want to capture on camera.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime that we felt like we were drifting into more of a cinematic thing, it was just like, whoa, let's really try to think about what we can do to make this feel more real. If something was coming off not as real, then it wasn't making it in the movie. And I think that's a problem with a lot of first-time filmmakers is they spend all this time and hard work trying to make something, and sometimes if it doesn't come out, they're still going to keep it in the movie. Where I was very particular on every shot in that film. That is, if it didn't look real, it wasn't going in.
Yeah. If I can ask, what was the thought process making the movie? Like, where did you get your resources from? Like, anything inspire you? Like.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like again, I'm a horror cinephile, so I mean, I've watched everything. So, Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Ferox, Man Bites Dog, Last House on Dead End Street, Last House on the Left, and of course, the home invasion scene in Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer is kind of like the main catalyst, where that scene is so brutal and unforgiving. I was just like, man, just imagine watching a feature-length movie of that. And at the time in 2000, movies that were shot on video looked like shit. And
they did.
People said they looked like shit. It's kind of, now it kind of has like a little bit of a cult status, a lot of those shot on video movies. A lot of people like those shot on video movies. But dude, in the late 90s and the early 2000s, man, like if you're making movies shot on video, they look cheap. They look amateurish. And even me as a filmmaker, the last thing I wanted to do was shoot on video. I wanted to shoot on film. But I just didn't have the resources. And, once we made August Underground, and use the video format to manipulate the medium, make it look dirtier than it really was. Like we shot August Underground on a really good video camera, the Canon XL1, but how we distress the tape to make it look like the way that it looks really gives it that authenticity.
It does.
Nothing looks like it. Now you can, nowadays you can get you can get a filter in your Final Cut or whatever to make your movie look, grindhouse style or video style, where that was just us constantly recording, like importing and exporting the movie over and over again on old VHS tapes to really give it that blown out videotape look.
Yeah, like somebody would be copying it over and over again. Because as you know, like VHS, you would copy, or even transferring files, you lose a little bit. It loses a little bit.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the quality is shitty. And you're right, though. Today's, movie market, I think a lot of people downgrade their videos on purpose. They want to give that the aesthetic feel. There's something actually, even scary about watching horror movies that, aren't in 4K, that are like 720 DPI, because you can't make out everything. The shadows are a little bit different, and it makes it a little bit more scarier.
That's what August Underground totally did. Like, being so bleached out in some of them scenes and so pixelated where you really have to like focus in. Is that nipple really gone? Like, did he really just do that? Is that person dead? And it was able for us to kind of hide the makeup, because no matter what, a rubber foot looks like a rubber foot. You know what I mean? Like, but if you don't dwell on the effect and you only show it in passing, that brings out the reality to it. And I think, us doing these long takes and showing the effects not so in the forefront really made it scary, And again, it's not about the effects; it's about the two guys. It's about the guy on the screen and what he's.
Yeah, even the fact that besides the torturing of the girl in the basement, a lot of the kills weren't very long out, drawn, saw-like tactic. One girl, you beat, we didn't even see it. It was just in the far forefront. People in the store got stabbed kind of quickly. It wasn't long process, but it was enough that this is how something would go down. They're not going to do a whole cinematic kill scene if they're serial killers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you, what was the budget on that first film?
On the first film, it was about $1,500 because I broke a convenience store glass window when I put my brother's head through it.
Oh.
That cost $600. And the rest of the money went to videotapes and some fake blood. But I had a lot of the materials at home, And
how did you find casting for that? How do you get a bunch of people to want to be in a movie like that?
Well, I was, I was teaching at the Tom Savini Makeup School at the time, and one of my students named John Wisniewski, he was just like, "Hey, I'd like to be the casting director on this, and I'll try to find some girls and guys that we can put in the movie." And he brought a bunch of people to the table, and then I also had my brother and my cousin and family members. My grandmother was in it. I thought that'd be really disturbing to kill an old lady.
Yes.
Just trying everything to be different. When you think of serial killer movies, it's always pretty people getting killed by pretty people, and that's the last thing I wanted. I wanted
real people getting killed by real people.
And, dude, I'm a 6'3", 250-pound guy. You know what I mean? And with a baby face at the time, so I kind of looked like somebody that you'd want to have help bring your groceries into your house, or you wouldn't mind getting into a car with, or having a beer and having a conversation and going home with them, instead of looking like a fucking mad lunatic. I let that side kind of come out when they're in the basement or they're in the situation. But all the other time, I'm smiling and trying to have, a fun time with it.
No, and I thought that was interesting too. Just like I said, the way that the characters were all portrayed, everybody hyper realistic, like you're watching real. I didn't even. That's why I was acting. Did you use actors? Did you hire prostitutes? What was the sourcing out of this? Because everybody in there looked very authentic, completely authentic.
And a lot of people weren't actors. So that made it even more exciting for me because I just had to turn on the juice a little bit more. If I wasn't getting the performance out of them, I would just have to scare them even more. And it's again when you're 6'3", 250 pounds with a hammer, and not really, knowing like, oh, I just met Fred. It's not like they knew me well, a lot of them. So who knows when you're trapped in the basement with these guys, and there's no big film crew. It was really just myself and Alan Peters, the cameraman, and that's who was there.
Yeah, no, and like I said, everything's shot POV style, so you don't have any exterior shots. You don't get any shots really. It's just everything through that that one lens of what the home video shows.
Yeah.
Which did that have challenges in itself trying to portray certain things on film just using that POV?
No, it helped, and it also gave me a style. With coming up how like hiding special effects and making the special effects go and be hidden in a take. Where like when you watch a normal horror film, it's always like the knife going up and the reaction, and then the knife going into something fake. Where in August Underground, I try to make it all in like one shot.
Yeah.
And make you feel like you're there, and then let it linger, and not take and just kind of let you sit in it, let you, like. You just pissed your pants, and now you're going to sit in it for a minute. You know what I mean? I'm not going to let you get cleaned up at all. I want you to sit and
it's good. Like I think sometimes a movie needs to be dirty like that. I mean,
and that's what those movies had to be. Those movies couldn't be fun. They're not fun. They aren't an endurance test, and that's why they're on that iceberg. Is because they're not meant to be fun. It's meant to be like the next level of horror or exploitation.
Well, what you can do, how far can a camera go? I mean, at some point it becomes an art, though, because you're not breaking laws, but it's how far can you take that camera? Where can you bring it? Where can you bring the mind? What thoughts can you do? I mean, there's people out there that made Serbian film. There's people out there that even made things like Megan is Missing and Necromantic. You have these weird, crazy films. How far can we take that camera and go with it?
Sure.
But at the same point, it also teaches a lot of moral stories along the way on some of them. I mean, in your case, there is people that exist like that. You never know who the hell your neighbors are. In something like Serbian Underground, be careful what the fuck you're signing up for. Megan is Missing. I tell almost any person with a daughter to watch that movie because people on the internet do take children, do take people. This is a real life thing.
Yeah.
So, these movies do serve a purpose, as dark and as grim as they are. But then, like you said, you're working with effects. How can I make things look good? And I think, part of being, working with effects and knowing effects is also kind of like challenging yourself. How can I make things work without spending billions of dollars? I want to do it as cheap as possible, but make it look as good as possible.
Yeah. Well, that was the whole thing with the August Underground movies and the whole idea behind what Toe Tag was as a company. We're artists. It was built around artists that wanted to like express themselves and express the art. It wasn't about making millions of dollars. To make millions of dollars, you can't make anything like that. It was really just trying to, show our love for special effects and make our art. And, we accomplished that. I think.
You did. It spawned 2 sequels, which I think, in my opinion, was just as on par with the first. You introduced a female killer.
Oh, yeah.
You expanded on it. Some say, well, the third one is the sickest one of them all. I think they're all pretty equally done. You've upped the violence. You've upped the, the desperation, the disparity. And, without going blockbuster, you can see movies like, you have other found footage films like, All Hallows Eve. Starts off dark clown killing girls. But then it nothing against Terrifier or that, but it went almost Hollywood on their sequels. They got bigger, but they got bigger. And they made it more the fight scenes more and this more. You didn't do that. You kept the same style going all throughout. We're found footage on a camera. We're doing the same kind of shit. It's just we're doing more of it. Now we have a new character involved, and this is what it is, which I like it. It was like a continuation.
Well, it had to feel like another videotape that you just picked up in a pile in in an abandoned house. Of course, we got better going as we got, August Underground was the template. It was like, all right, well, this is what I think we should do. And then when we realized that it worked, and we went into what would become August Underground's Mortem, there was, the craft got a little bit better. And then, of course, bringing in Krusty, she was such an important piece to the puzzle, not only through the movies, but through Toe Tag as, the head creative of like all the art direction behind the movies. And then by the time we got to August Underground's Penance, we did the Redson Tower before that. So that was kind of like our big, Toe Tag mainstream movie. And we just got better and better. I know I got better as a director, and we got better as special effects artists, and better as a core team. And by the time we went back and did August Underground's Penance, we were just in a whole different mind state, and just better at the craft. And there's a moment in time where Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was going to play my father in August Underground's Penance.
Ooh. That would have been nice.
We had a nice long talk about it, and he believed too that by him being in the movie, it would take away the realism, and it made absolutely perfect sense because then people realize, hey, that's Leatherface in there, and that's what usually people do once you make a product that gains some sort of success, you want to add bigger stars, you want to make it bigger. And I mean, look at like you said, the Terrifier movie, same thing, like. Now they have all these, great horror icons in the film. They didn't have that in the first one, so.
No, and I think that takes away from the realism because now you're seeing people that are famous. It's like, oh, well, I mean, it's not as scary anymore.
No, well, Terrifier is just, it's going to be, Freddy Krueger with just more gruesome gore effects. You know what I mean? Like you go to Spirit Halloween and, Art the Clown is there. Kudos to Damien and what he's done with that franchise. It's amazing. But I was doing that kind of gross shit, years before. It's just that it's different when you make something that is more nihilistic, and brutal.
Well, I think in today's world we're in, like, in 2000 we were in a different time period. We were more violent, but we were more. I don't know. It's weird. Like today, people are more shocked, but if you try to.
Look what Don, you watch The Walking Dead and the gore effects in that. Imagine being, I'm 49 years old, so like just imagine me being 12 years old and watching The Walking Dead in 1989, 1990.
Yeah,
the greatest thing in the world. You know what I mean? All I had back then was the Friday the 13th movies and shit. So there wasn't. No. It wasn't the way it is nowadays. We're a little bit more desensitized as a society because of what we have access to on the fucking internet,
Well, yeah. But I mean, like I said, some people, it's funny. Some of the people that watch like older stuff get, really appalled or really they can't stomach it. Other people like, well, this is how it used to be in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s.
Oh, come on. That's when horror is good. Today's horror is a lot of stuff's watered down.
Oh, all the good ideas have been taken. But, your next film was interesting, too. You had, the lesbian film crew, and then the killer came out.
Oh, Maskhead.
Yes, that's a good one as well. I haven't watched it yet. I'll be honest. I bought it, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, so I've directed 8 feature films.
Yeah.
August Underground in 2001, August Underground's Mortem in 2003, the Redson Tower in 2006. Kind of rolling to 2000.
Oh, so that was in between the
it was
going in between the two.
I just didn't want people to think I'm just the guy that makes these snuff movies.
No.
We ended up doing special effects for a movie called Murder Set Pieces, directed by Nick Palumbo in 2004.
Okay.
So once we made a little bit of money on that, we came back. We took that money. We opened up our first studio, and then that's when we decided to make the Redson Tower. But after the Redson Tower in 2007. I think 2000. Yeah, 2000. Yeah, 2007 was August Underground's Penance, and then by 2009 we opened up our big studio. We made Murder Collection Volume 1 and Maskhead. We made both those that year, and in 2010 we did Cella Turcica, And then my last movie was not a toe tag picture, but it was my first solo outing, and it was called The Final Interview.
Now, let me ask you, those other ones like the mystery and murders, were those like feature films? So those were
Oh
all
yeah,
films.
oh yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah. So Murder Collection is kind of like our take on The Faces of Death. At the time, there was these videos coming out, like, Two Guys in a Hammer, like the real stuff that was on the internet. And the beheading videos, was
Yeah,
becoming.
yeah, no, I remember those, like with ISIS and all of that.
Yeah,
So
so Toe Tag was like, hey, let's make our own movie that shows that kind of violence, but it's all our trickery in our special effects, and the way that we know how to shoot stuff. So we did everything from like a Japanese autopsy to home invasions to
it's almost just like, again, real footage kind of thrown together, but it's all cinematically
It is,
done.
yeah. So the idea behind it is like you're watching a video clip show from the early stages of the internet. So
Okay,
it's
I
kind
got
of that's kind of, and it was a surprise. We didn't tell anybody we were making it. It just came out. It was one of those.
No, I've been having trouble trying to find it. That's why I'm like trying to locate a physical copy. Amazon keeps popping in and out, but they keep like used.
A lot of dude, a lot of my movies are out of print, but right now, Unearthed Films is kind of stepped up and wants to release all the Toe Tag catalog. So they just did the August Underground trilogy. Now, Maskhead just came out.
I got that one.
So eventually, everybody's going to get all my movies. But if you want the first pressing original Toe Tag stuff, they're very hard to find. They're very expensive because there's only 1,000 to 2,000 of them. You know what I mean? They were all like, hand done. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no,
very
totally.
very underground and very punk rock.
But I think that brings its own flavor to the table when making a film. It gives it its own flair, and it almost gives it its own prestige. I mean, it's a film now that's hard for me to find. It makes me want to watch it even more because I can't go to the video store or
Absolutely.
wherever and buy it. I have to hunt it down on eBay or find somebody that has it, or I go to a lot of horror conventions and shit and have to ask around. And see who has what. And then that's part of the hunting just in films in general,
Yeah,
You try to find these films, especially when they're not mass marketed films.
Yeah, that's what makes it fun about being a movie collector, is the hunt. Like when I was growing up, it was tape trading.
Yeah.
Or going to video store, seeing who will sell me movies before you can get them previously viewed. You know what I mean?
See, like I said it to, Victor today. I'm like, this is what I would be like if I, imagine, it's 2001. I used to work Blockbuster. I used to be that guy, I rent, some movie for the family to sit around, and all of a sudden I put it in, and it starts off with some girl getting her fucking tit in the basement bleeding, and it's a real fucking snuff film that's been put in the video because they returned the wrong film. And I'm just like, that could happen.
Sure.
And that was the whole vibe that I kind of had going there. Like I picked up, like watching that, like I picked up the wrong film, and this is what I'm watching.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to flash forward a little bit. I did watch your last film. I got the download. I am going to order the 4K version, and I am going to order the, I see that you have cars, and you got like some other stuff. I'm a big stuff, like collector editions, volumes, all the extra bells and whistles, lobby cars. I'm a big sucker for that. I'm just trying to get through convention season, and then I'm going to spend more money. But I did buy the digital download to watch, and I sat there and watched it. And I'll be honest, right from the hook, when the guy goes, someone's going to die tonight and I can't wait, I was hooked on that. Like, I was just like, this is going to be good, because now, your movie starts off, you color graded it down. Like I said, when I talked to you, I want to say it's set in the 70s or 80s.
It takes place in the early 80s.
So, it has that aesthetic right down to the sound, the music that's playing. Everything, the cars, the color, the color yellow looked different in the 80s than it does in a movie today. And, I notice those things. I do a lot of film stuff. I like, to make short films. I like to color grade things. I like to play around. I always like to make stuff look from that era of the 70s, 80s. So once I started watching, I was just hooked on this. And it wasn't your typical horror that you put out. It wasn't a shocking horror. It wasn't a, oh my God, horror. It was almost a slow burn. I was sitting there and I slowly noticed myself getting innerly worked up because I'm like, the anticipation of what the hell is going to happen and how is this going to conclude was starting to get to me because everybody starts unraveling.
Yeah.
You got your interviewer. He's slowly unraveling as the night goes on, and you start to peel his layers back and see he's just a mess. But you can see the killer is starting to slowly lose his patience. You got the lady on the phone. She's slowly losing her patience with the whole ordeal. Everything is just slowly going. It's like, this can go so many ways right now. And you forget all about you forget all about the guy cleaning up. So you don't even think about that until you see it. Because in the beginning, you see it all kind of clearly. Everything's kind of laid out. It's just like, oh, don't worry about this. Don't worry about that. Until the very end. It's like, I watched it and I had almost, I was just like sat there and I thought for like a good 10 minutes and reflected on the film. And then I did watch it again later that night. Because I do like to watch things twice. But like I said, totally different shot, totally different, style of a film. How is that?
Well, again, August Underground was made by a 24-year-old kid. The final interview was made by a guy in his 40s. Just more, more seasoned filmmaker. The stories that I wanted to tell was this, and I was always fascinated by those serial killer interviews, like Geraldo, or like you'd see like the Jeffrey Dahmer interviews or the Ted Bundy interviews, these tapes, and I just thought, like, what if I showed like the inner workings of something like this? And that's why the movie is done the way that it is. It's almost kind of like a play, where you're bouncing back and forth from these talking heads. You have Oliver, the newscaster, and you have Darius Tidman, the killer, and then you have Rhonda, who's the producer and the director in the band. So you have like all these characters just kind of like spinning you and spinning you and spinning you. And again, it does take you, it's a mind fuck. And I wanted to rely on great acting instead of gore effects. My whole career has been built off of like, making sure we had really great gore effects. The stories have always been cool, but as a filmmaker, I wanted to grow and I wanted to try to tell a story. I think, if you watch Cella Turcica, that's more of a drama that has this really climactic horror ending. And it was kind of like I love dramas that have intense horror elements to it, like David Lynch or David Cronenberg.
Yep.
So it's just my way of, I think horror sticks to the ribs a little bit more when it's based in a drama setting. So, to me, making like a slasher movie is a piece of cake. But to really hook somebody in with a story and great acting, you really have to make a drama and hook them.
And again, honestly, what's more horrific than, again, real horror? Whether this, the Tillman was, fictional or not, there's been serial killers out there that have been interviewed, that have killed people, that have done these things with similar backstories than that guy had.
Absolutely.
And so, you can find this on the news. And so it's like, what's more terrifying right now than the real world? What's more terrifying than the news? Not much. So, bringing that in, it doesn't have to be this gore fest. The only blood I saw was at the end. And I was fine with that. I wasn't looking for this gory. I could tell right off the bat, this isn't going to be, a serial killer slashing through the whole thing. This is going to be, I would call an intellectual horror movie, because you got to kind of think and look around and kind of almost play detective and see what's going on, because there's a lot going on. It's not just one piece here.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of things going here, there, and here, and you just got to kind of follow the whole thing. The acting carried it right through. All the actors, I thought, did an amazing job playing the roles and honestly keeping what the authenticity of what was happening. I felt like I was watching a real behind the scenes show. I mean, I know a little bit, from the wrestling world, how, in between things happen and everybody kind of changes character and it's like this and that and everybody puts down for a second. It's the
Yeah.
same thing, when the cameras are off on a news crew. And, everybody's like, okay, now, and people's real attitudes come out and you see how people are kind of assholes and this and that. Because they're no longer acting and they no longer have to act.
Yeah.
And you got that sense too. This guy really doesn't give a shit. He's just an asshole, but he does a job.
He does it, yeah, and that's it. And when they count, from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and he has to go, you see him change, go from a mess to trying to keep it together to finish the interview. And I couldn't have been happier with my cast on this movie. I had Granger Hines, who played Oliver Ross, who was in Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. He was he's in the Coen Brothers, The Battle of Buster Scruggs. And then, of course, Diane Franklin, who is one of my favorite 80s actresses, Better Off Dead, The Last American Virgin, Amityville Horror. And then Damien Marusak, he's who played Darius Tidman. He's been in a bunch of my movies. He's kind of like my De Niro, he's somebody who I have a lot of faith in and I know who has a lot of talent. And I thought he hit that out of the park. His eyes, his look, everything about him, you know what I mean? He really made you think that this is a real bad person.
Yeah, and you got the sense that, he believed in what he did. And there's nothing scarier than somebody believing in these horrible crimes that they did,
Sure.
not showing the remorse. You had the guy keep don't you feel bad or this or that, and he's not giving in. He's not caving. He did what he did. He has no remorse whatsoever.
Yeah. And, that's, you watch like those Iceman tapes, there's no remorse in any with the stuff that
Nothing.
those guys say. So, that's the haunting shit of like the human psyche, and that's really where I wanted to take this. The movie's kind of like a feature-length Tales from the Crypt episode or a Twilight Zone. It's just really unsettling and weird.
And it's surreal in some ways. You're right.
Because it jumps back and forth from two different kinds of mediums. You're watching like the cinematic look, and then you go straight to the broadcast. So it's constantly like jumping back and forth, and the audio does the same thing, like where you're hearing, the audio coming from the earbud. You're hearing, the noises in the background of the people working. It's really layered. And, you brought up the look and the color. One of the, I like spent a lot of money. I went to Los Angeles and had this movie color corrected, and at the same time they were doing Mamma Mia 2, you know what I mean? But I told my colorist, I'm like, I want this to look like Flashdance or all the right moves, like movies from the 80s that were shot in Pittsburgh. I'm like, I really want that early 80s film look,
And they nailed it, though.
We nailed it. The costume design and everything, the music. When people have like this really weird nostalgia about the 80s. So like when they think of the 80s, they think of like that, like the Giorgio Moroder kind of scores, the more synthy kind of scores. And, that didn't really come until later in the 80s, but in the early 80s, a lot of that stuff was still like saxophone and
still blues related. Yeah.
And film scores. So I really wanted that. I didn't want to make it like, you're listening to a Nintendo soundtrack, No,
it wasn't that new age like 88 or that new wave kind of scene. It was still like that. Even if it was late 80s, it was still early 80s, kind of like I said, like, you got, it almost reminded me of like police kind of crime noir kind of story that,
the theme song to Oliver Ross's, I remember telling, Paul Joyce did the music, who's an amazing, talented musician. And, for Oliver Ross's theme show song, I told him I wanted it to be masculine and I wanted it to feel like a Magnum PI or something like that, where it just, as soon as you hear it, there's masculinity behind it.
And that's all the character was. I mean, the character really was, he was actually like toxic, so toxic masculine. He was like,
Oh, for
you know,
sure.
whatever. Throw away the baby, do this, do
Yeah,
whatever.
making fun of his
His friend.
helper. That's the funny thing is too is like he makes all these like gay jokes about his friend, but the guy's got a wedding ring on. It's just him being a dick. It's just him having the alpha male status. So
Talking to his side girlfriend,
Yeah.
telling her to get the abortion over and over again. Even telling, even in between sets, just telling Tillman, hey, I think your brother that killed himself's a pussy. Just that line alone to bait him. You could just see like the acting on that was so good because he didn't like lose his cool like you would think.
Yeah.
His eyes just widened to the status of this guy is gonna fucking die.
Yeah.
Nothing else. It just said it in his face.
Yeah, no, there's some really, those guys, I said, they delivered some amazing performances. I really love the Mekong Delta monologue that Oliver Ross tells him about the first time he kills somebody, and that's just a very powerful scene.
Now, is this all stuff that you wrote out? Did you do the writing on this
No,
one?
so the script is written by one of my writing partner, Rebecca Swan. She's amazing. Amazing writer. So, I come up pretty much how my movies work is I come up with the story, I come up with the characters, I lay everything all out, and then I try to write with a partner. And because I feel like sometimes when I'm doing all the writing, it sounds like the way that I talk. And, one of the things about writing a movie is you need to find those other voices. And when you have a professional writer working with you, it's easy. That's what they do. They know how to find those voices. So I give them the ingredients, and they're able to make the cake.
Oh, I love it. And like you said, this film, obviously, you didn't work on a $1,500 budget on this one.
No, this one was a little bit. This one was a little bit more.
Yes.
But we shot the movie in 9 days. Which is crazy. But when you don't have a lot of money, you have to plan. And again, I had movie stars on this movie. It was my first.
Yeah, now you had actors. You had to pay actors and stuff.
There was no dilly dallying around, and I wanted my sets to be professional, and I wanted my actors to not work an 18-hour day. Like when you're on an independent movie, sometimes you just keep going and going until the wheels fall off, and you're so tired. I wanted to make sure that, everybody got rest, everybody was ready to go the next day, and just be very prepared, so everything was built on a stage, like I said, the interview room was in an old garage because I needed the bricks to look like a prison. I needed those big cinder block bricks.
Yeah.
And then I was able to afford a prison for one day. So that day was a really long, long day. But it made the movie look like $1 million being able to shoot in that prison, have those big long halls, and have the doors.
So it's a real prison? You just rented out for the day.
It's the same prison that Fincher shot Mindhunter in. You know what I mean? So, it's a defunct prison. It's actually no longer there anymore. It's been torn down. But the exterior is the prison that we shoot Mayor Kingstown at.
So were those all just actors that were in the cells?
Yeah, those are all friends. Everybody in there is all friends. That I was just like, hey, come on down and
fill these cells up.
Yeah, be these prisoners.
So that must have been like you said, a long day because you're trying to get every shot that you need done in the jail and done in there, and then everything else is going to be done everywhere else.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, like when you see Tidman walking down the hall and then he comes into the room, like that's actually him at the prison walking through a door, and then when he sits down in the chair, that's actually him sitting in the set.
A whole different area.
But it's movie magic. Editing. Knowing how you're going to shoot things is so important. What we did was we actually brought the shelf that is behind Tidman in the set. We brought it to the prison because I knew that we needed to see that when he walks past it, so we can just put it up in a room and he walks past it and it'll edit flawlessly.
So you have that,
And that's how my brain works, man. Like, I've been making movies in my brain since I was a little kid. I've wanted to make movies my whole life. Um, I
What
thought,
made you want to make movies? Like, did you get inspired by horror as a kid? Did you just
oh, for
have a?
sure. Yeah, I mean, like Frankenstein is like my favorite movie of all time. And Frankenstein made me love monsters. It made me love the dead. It made me love, how those movies look, the shadows and the black, movies shot in black and white. Like I was so fascinated by the early Universal monster movies. And then just like any kid, like you keep getting further and further down the hole, and you start watching more, extreme horror movies. And growing up in the 80s, man, when you had your pick of any film you wanted to at the video store, it was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
So I would just watch everything and anything. And it wasn't just horror movies. It was anything and everything. I was watching all kinds of movies. I was studying film. I was, we can have a conversation about any genre you want to talk about. I've watched a lot of stuff. And I think to be a great filmmaker, you have to study the craft. You have to know what influenced who. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I'll say as a kid or younger, as a younger adult, not so much now. It has to be more, but I mean, I watched all genres, total genres, a lot of comedy, a lot of drama, a lot of um, just like you said, different stuff. Foreign film, a lot of foreign films.
Oh yeah, man.
Today, I mean, I kind of am more picky and choosy. I do just prefer to watch a lot more horror. I'll jump around and watch something if it sparks my interest. A lot of the comedies to me are never going to peak what they had in the 80s just because you're not going to get the same actors you had in the 80s. I was talking to the guy from Weekend at Bernie's, the guy that played Bernie he was at one of the conventions and we were just, talking. I was like, you're never going to find a movie like this today that can be made like this, that would be this funny, that would even, gain such a cult standing. It's just, you can't capture those moments. So a lot of the stuff I don't watch, I end up watching horror because, contrary, I know Vic says that a lot of horror isn't good, but I think there is still a lot of horror good. I think you just got to get out of what's being mass produced, what's being made for the masses, and look at directors and see, find the directors that are putting stuff out for the direction of a film or to make that art.
No,
they're not making money, they're making art. And when they make the art, if the money comes, great. If it doesn't, they don't care because they made the art.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some good stuff. I mean, look at the kids that made Bring Her Back and Talk to Me. You know what I mean? Those
A24 right now is killing it out there.
There's another great movie from Argentina called The Evil Within that I thought was really amazing. I do too. I turn over a lot of rocks, man. And I'm hoping to find the next great horror movie to support and to show other people. Like that was like my whole life as a young adult, teenager too, was turning my friends on to movies. And it was like, oh, you've never seen Gummo, you've never seen Pink Flamingos, you've never seen I Spit on Your Grave, you've never seen this. I was showing my friends all these movies.
Yeah, well, you got to watch John Waters films if you want, even if you're not. To even understand some modern horror, you need to watch John Waters films, even though they weren't technically horror films. It shows depravity, and to learn the depravity, that's how you can make a really scary horror film.
Absolutely, I mean, like, God, man, I'll watch The Elephant Man, and and it'll send all kinds of different emotions.
I mean, you're talking about, like you said, going into videos. I remember going in. I one night, me and my friends, my dad allowed me to rent whatever in the horror genres or whatever. So me and my friends rent two movies. One, what is it? Paint Me Blood Red, and the other was Female Trouble. And here I got a John Waters film. I got a guy, you got somebody they basically raped themselves on camera, which I found out later, which I'm very impressed with cinematically, being into cinema. I'm like, that's a cool trick.
Yeah.
But, you got to really kind of, at that point, being, 12 or 13, I was like, what the fuck am I watching here? Yeah. This is wild.
That's the best part. It's like, when I turn people on to the Greasy Strangler or, whatever, there's movies out there that are worth, fucking up a person's head. You know what I mean? And it's a good thing. You hope that, it's like even my movies, when somebody who's never seen any of my movies watches something and it opens a brand new door. It opens a third eye or whatever you want to call it.
Well, what do you think, Vic? You watched today for the first time ever. You watched August Underground.
They stuffed shit in that girl's boob. I've
Yeah.
never seen anything like that before.
No.
And that was because Versace's like they just put shit in that girl's boob. I was like, no way. It's like, yep, they just fucking put shit in that girl's boob. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what I like. I like the unique style. I mean, that's something like that. No one, who the hell would think? Now, granted, I did think for a second, what the fuck's wrong with you? For having a scene like that. But but no, it's unique. It's fresh. It's something. Versace's trying to show me a lot of shock, like moments in movies these days, like Cannibal Holocaust. I looked at that as in like you don't fuck around in the Amazon jungle. That's what happens when you do.
Yeah, sure.
That much of a shock value there. But but August Underground was one of the most shocking ones you've shown me so far.
I honestly, in my opinion, I think that's more gruesome than Serbian just because it seems more realistic.
Sure.
We watched that one last week, and Serbian has its shock moments. It has its, its factors of what the fuck. But the way it's filmed very cinematically that it's almost like, well, I'm watching a movie.
Yeah, it's a
There
movie.
is definitely times in August Underground that I forget I'm watching a movie, that I'm not watching a fucking kill scene here because everything blends and looks so realistic. The sound sounds realistic. The way that people are laughing and taunting people is realistic. And I remember those days of, just being a careless kid, walking around, having a camcorder, fucking around with somebody. Because, that would be the thing, oh, let's film what we're doing. Or let's go skateboarding. Or let's go here. Or let's go there. Oh, they're going to fuck around with the grocery drive. Oh, my boy's going to steal some beer. Let's film it.
That's exactly
I remember
it.
those days.
That's exactly it. In the early 2000s, Jackass was just getting started. People were shooting. People were filming themselves shooting like paintball guns at people on the streets. Like, kids were just doing stupid shit. And now that they had now video cameras are kind of you could afford one. They weren't these big giant super cameras. It was actually something you could hold in your hand.
No, but the cool thing is they videotaped it, but they didn't broadcast. So they kept the videos, but they didn't put it to the internet like today. See, today now they would have just put that whole video to the internet. You would have had a live stream of August Underground on some dark web channel running.
For sure. When I first made August Underground, a lot of the clips from it would end up on those sites. You'd go to like Oakrish or a lot of those sites, they escape me, now, but back in the day, like, August Underground clips would pop up and people would think that stuff is all real.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I think, in some ways, that's like kudos to the artist, kudos to the chef here. You've made a film so real that people are putting it in true crime sites. Like, this is wild.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And it's also a good tribute to your gore effects, saying, hey, these people are thinking this is really snuff. We're doing something right on the gore effects.
Yeah. Well, there again, Toe Tag is made up of a bunch of amazing artists. Myself and Jeremy Cruz, who did all the special effects from August Underground's Mortem he's a master. And then, Krusty, who did all the art until she left in 2009, and then of course my wife Shelby produces all the movies. So it's a family of artists that just wanted to create sick and twisted shit, and it was just our way to express the art, and it's a way for me to just express myself because I don't I'm a pretty normal person, you know what I mean, and I don't condone violence, and I don't condone any of that kind of stuff, and I want violence to hurt. I want it to be scary. I don't want it to be funny. That's why the violence in my films is never funny. It's always as real as possible and brutal as possible because that's how violence is. And, until you've experienced it, unfortunately, I had a moment in my life where my cousin was murdered, and it made me not want to make horror movies anymore because I thought I was just putting bad juju out in the world. And, my family was just like, Fred, you can't stop doing what you're doing. This is like your art, it's like, it's the paintings that I want to paint. if I don't have a way to have an outlet for that, who knows what kind of person or mental state I would be in. So
No, it's true.
you know, that's why my art has always been a little macabre. You know, I was born with a macabre gene, a little dark.
But you know what? I think, I'm very macabre myself. I'm very dark. I like these dark films. I like these twisted films. I find them to be entertaining. Not that and I don't condone murder. I think, I don't condone violence. I don't condone any of that. But I think having film being, whether I'm, like I said, I've started to get into writing and filming short films, and I'm hoping, with a couple of friends to do, a short indie feature. I picked up a couple of cameras and so forth. But even prior to that, doing other stuff, and watching a lot of horror, or even playing video games or playing graphic stuff, I find those all to be honestly very normal, healthy outlets that allow people to express their darkest sides without harming anybody, and allows them to just get rid of that energy and just move along and live a normal and be a normal person.
Absolutely.
When you repent yourself from all this, because it is natural to feel darkness, it is natural to feel hate, it is natural to feel anger and all of that rage. If you keep repenting that and you have no place to put that, it's going to either harm yourself, harm somebody, do something bad. But if you can turn to art, and it doesn't have to just be film, you can paint a picture, you can write a story, write a book, freaking, start a podcast, do whatever the fuck you want that's creative, and take that energy that's so bad and dark and use it to your advantage. Whether you're angry at the world and hateful, then write something really dark and angry. Yeah. Make a really dark, angry film.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be a beautiful masterpiece.
Not at all. Not at all. And, when you think about all the wonderful people who indulge in horror conventions or heavy metal or punk rock or whatever, we're the most normal ones out there. It's the ones that try to be, a little too on the nose are the ones you have to watch out for. So, I've never met anybody from the genre, who's, fucked up. You know what I mean? We're all very aware that this is all fake, and we love, fake blood and corn syrup, and we like the feelings of, watching the pretty girl being, impaled through deer antlers or whatever. So be it. You know what I'm saying? Again, it's just an outlet.
And, no. Let me ask you.
I'm glad that I can provide that for a lot of people. And again, like I'm college level, man. You know what I mean? When you look at a lot of the other movies, it's very tame. When you step into the world of my films, like, you're getting something that's just a little bit more darker.
Well, let me ask you something. Like, you put up, like I said, you're on that, like I said, you're on these icebergs, you're on these sites. What's the darkest film you've seen?
I mean, it all, the last movie that really bothered me, this is even before I made August Underground, was Todd Phillips, the guy who directed The Joker. One of his first movies was a documentary on Gigi Allen. It's called Hated. And it just, I didn't realize that there was a human being out there that would do such things, that would knock his own teeth out with a microphone or fucking shit on the stage and smear it on his face. And I was like, oh my God, this is like so fucking disturbing. But this is real. You know what I mean? So I'm actually seeing something. I'm actually like watching a documentary on somebody who was actually real and actually did this kind of stuff. So that, that's kind of disturbing. But when it comes to the artistry of movie making and things being disturbing, I know I'm watching through different eyes. I'm watching how the effects are done. I'm watching as a director on how things are done. So it really, there's nothing that sits with me that's like, oh my God, that's way too much. Because I get
that.
I wrote the cookbook on a lot of that shit.
No, I get that. And I just always wanted is there something else darker and deeper that I should be watching too?
Yeah, no. And the thing is like, when I was a young man, you watch those faces of death and traces of death, and a lot of that shit is kind of like a rite of passage, because you're wondering about your own mortality. And I need even like think about what's going on in the world right now with watching Charlie Kirk being assassinated. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're watching somebody's throat being blown out right there on the internet. Any kid can watch that shit. You know, like
And that's real, and that's more scary than anything that anybody can put on a
you know,
camera.
yeah. And it's just like, okay, I was one and done for me. I don't need to keep watching that kind of shit.
And like you said, I grew up, and similar to you, you grew up a time, where there was, beheadings on the news. There was, there was shock sites, you had like, these gore sites and gore.com. You had like steakandcheese.com
Yeah,
and rotten.com. I used to hang out on rotten.com and see
yeah.
what nasties they would show. So, I mean, when you get to, the film, it's like,
Yeah.
okay.
And you change, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes people become parents and they can't watch shit like that. And I can tell you how many of like my most dedicated toe tag fans won't watch it, who loved August Underground back in the day, will not watch them anymore. It's because now that their senses change, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean?
What's funny for me, I think I love it even more now that after I've had a kid. Now that I've had all the struggles and stress of having the child, I think I like this even more because it's more of an outlet. It's more of a what the fuck.
Yeah. There you go. So that shows a different perspective. Everybody's different.
It is. And every movie is going to touch someone different. Like you said, nothing really resonates. I would say that I'm pretty desensitized when it comes to horror. I've just watched so much horror, so much gore, so much violence, so much stuff that, you watch it over and over again. Like you said, it's not what am I seeing? It's more like, how are they doing? You start asking different questions. How, ooh, that's a cool shot. Oh, this is done differently than that. But, there's one movie that I will say resonated with me when I first turned like 18, 19, that I watched it. This mind fucked me. I never did hard drugs because of it. And that was Requiem for a Dream.
Sure.
The way that movie was presented, it didn't glorify drugs in any which way. And it made me, while other kids in my area turned to opiates and did other shit, I just was like, I just kept having these visions of these scenes, the endings of everybody's downfall, just being like, fuck that ain't going to be me.
For sure. That's a great movie to bring up too, is because like, watching somebody decline is horrible. You know what I mean? Like watching somebody, starting off in an arc, being beautiful and happy and life is good, and then becoming a junkie and then falling down and dying. Like that's a horrible, that somewhere in our life, we might've known somebody like that, or we know that this is wrong. And this is the way you don't want to live your life. And of course, that sinks in. I remember going to the theater to see Kids, Larry Clark's Kids, and I went with a girl that used to run a video store in my hometown. Her and I were like the two big cinephiles. So we had to drive far away. It was like an hour and a half to go see Kids because it wasn't playing anywhere. But we go see it, and we didn't talk to each other for a good 40 minutes after the movie was done because we were both just so in shock in what we just saw, because I grew up in New Jersey, man. Like I would take the train into Manhattan and go buy weed in Washington Square Park and hang out with the skateboarders, and those kids were my age.
Yeah.
Leo Fitzpatrick, all those kids, you know what I mean? All those guys are in their late 40s now, but these were city kids. These are people that like you'd see on the street, Harmony Korine and like all those guys going to the tunnel in Manhattan. So that shit just felt so close to home and so real that like, you watch that movie and you see at the end of the movie, like Casper being like, oh my God, what have I done? Knowing that Jenny's got AIDS. And it's like, oh, like as a young person who's sexually active, like that's the most terrifying thing in the whole fucking world.
No, especially then, if you think of the time period, there was a lot of stigmas and misconceptions and a lot of, there wasn't any of the medications or out there. So it was almost like a death sentence.
Yeah.
People were afraid of that stuff.
16, 17, 18, 19 years old, man, all you want to do is fuck. It's terrifying to see what's going on, because you see this beautiful girl, Chloe Sevigny, and then all of a sudden now she's got AIDS because of this kid. And you just watched him make out with this girl and have sex with this virgin, knowing she's got it now. Like it was so upsetting to me, like watching this movie, but it's one of my favorites because it provoked so many emotions in my You know,
I think that was a raw film. It opened up a lot of people's eyes, and even I think it was the second film, but the movie Bully
oh
was
yeah,
just as powerful because at that point, bullying wasn't really talked about. Columbine hadn't really happened, so like it wasn't discussed enough. Bullying went under the table. So to see something happen and have it be based on a true story again, it was like holy shit.
yeah,
And just seeing, again, I think there's something really airy and a little bit, scary about seeing real kids kind of plot out a fucking murder. When you see 13, 14, and 15-year-olds sitting there and plotting out a murder and knowing that they don't know what the fuck they're doing, but seeing it done so sloppily that they think they're, smartest thing, and they're planning basically, and they don't know the repercussions. They don't even know the moral dilemma that they're going to get themselves into after the fact. They just think, wow, I'm killing somebody. This is fucking cool. I've seen this in video games. I've seen this on movies.
yeah.
This dude was a Mortal Kombat guy in that game. He's like, I'm going to chop his head off or whatever. And it's like, at the end of it, everybody is just really sick of what they've done. Nobody can hold their shit together, and again, even though maybe it was justified, maybe it wasn't, the dude was a horrible character. Again, somebody got killed. And it's like,
Yeah.
you got a father at the end that's distraught that his son is gone. You got a fucking friend that's like, what the fuck? You got everybody getting arrested. It's a very despair ending. There's no happiness. And sometimes you need movies like that. You don't need a happy ending. You don't need a fairy tale ending movie.
Yeah, I don't make happy ending movies.
No.
One of my favorite movies is The Last American Virgin with Diane Franklin. And that movie ends on a complete downer. And I remember watching it as a very young person and being like, wow, you can make a movie where the guy doesn't get the girl at the end, and it's a complete fuck up like scenario where like he just paid for her abortion and sold the stereo to pay for it, and now she's gonna go back to the same dude after you did all this stuff and you love her, and she's gonna go right back to this guy. It was like the most humble relating thing. My little brain was just like, wow, man, people could be really bad.
Yeah, like I mean, I think that's what
the whole movie's a comedy. The whole movie's a titty comedy up until that ending, and it's just like, boom, a car wreck, and you're just like, holy shit, like what did I just watch? And
I think like even from
I liked it. For some reason I kind of liked the way that made me feel. Like it made me think about the movie constantly. And I think
it does. Those endings can
when you get a happy
us.
ending, it's just like, okay, like it's okay, I'm good, but then when you watch a movie that provokes you and triggers emotions in you that you think about it for days and days and days, and you talk about it and you analyze it, that's the best part.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Requiem. I mean, had Lawrence not been doing ass to ass, and the other dude, Wayne's not in jail, and this not happening, and everybody got clean and sober, I don't think that movie would have had any impact on me. To see the total downfall, to have that ending, and I think as an American culture, studying a lot of horror, that we have this need, or there's a percentage of people that have this need to have this fucking Hollywood happy ending. And that's why I love, like, sometimes you'll see the foreign films. They're very much different. Like, I was watching, Don't Say a Word or Don't Speak, the original version. And the original ending, this couple steals the kid and cuts the girl's tongue out and steals a new kid, kills their parents. In the American version, the mother's got to come and save it and savior of the day. Even Martyrs, the original Martyrs is much better than the freaking new one.
Of course. And that's the problem with, America. We want those happy endings. We want to put, like creatively, if I was given that opportunity, to change my art because how I'm going to get more money. I don't know how to even do that. I think, it's one of the reasons why I've always stayed so true to being a underground filmmaker, is because I get to create the art that I want to create. God damn, is it fucking hard, man. I finance all my movies. It's, I don't have big studios being like, hey, Fred, here's millions of dollars, go make something. I think they're more afraid of me because the way that I create the art forms that I create. And, I'm fine with that. By me having the struggle makes me think outside the box. It it gives me opportunities to be true to the art that I'm creating. And when you have, so like my day job, I work on big studio movies. You know what I mean? Like right now I'm working on a TV show for Apple, but and I just know how the big machine works, and the money's great, but as an artist, it's it's a little different. You have the compromise, and you have so many people telling you what to do and what you cannot do. When it comes to my films or toe tag movies, it's usually just us egging each other on to make the most sick and depraved shit that we can.
I like it though. I like it. And I mean, like you said, you don't really write happy ending, but I mean, the final interview, I wouldn't say the ending was the worst. I mean, it was happy to some people. I mean, the guy was an asshole.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, like when Swan wrote the script, the ending was the ending was, I don't want to, still a lot of people haven't seen it.
No, I'm not going to give it away. I want people to watch it.
Sure. And what's really weird about myself is that, I'm known for these August Underground films. So a lot of people don't even realize that I've made 8 feature films. They just think that I've made these August Underground movies. They have no other, because of my movies are out of print. They're very hard to get. So they've cast a very big shadow. When it came to the final interview, Swan wanted to have, she comes from a Hollywood background. So, the red herring in the movie was kind of going to be the way that the movie was going to end. And I was just like, that's not how a Fred Vogel movie ends. Violence comes out of nowhere. That is the reality of true violence. Some people, you don't know when your life is going to be taken from you 9 times.
No, and that's the scary part of it. The scary part is the violence.
Absolutely. And that's why in my movies I always try to make it look like that and come out of nowhere, because that's where violence really stems from. It's very primal, it's very raw. And
yeah, I mean, one minute you're giving head, the next minute you're pounding the girl's head, and it's just like, it was like that. But that's how quick the violence, ascended. That's how quick it went.
Sure. Absolutely.
And the sick fuckers we're like, she didn't say the safe word.
Yeah.
Well,
but no, I mean, honestly, I didn't know what was going to happen, because I got the guy with, I see the pen, and the pen was in my head the whole movie from the beginning when he was fighting with it. I'm like, is this dude going to, something going to happen with the pen? Is something going to happen here? What's going to happen? How is this going to end? How is this going to get wrapped up? Because by the end of this, last 5 minutes of the movie, I'm kind of tense. And I don't usually get tense in horror films. I don't usually get tense. But I'm just psychologically tense, because these guys have had such tension in this room. And I know what it's like to be in an interview. I understand that. Mine never get that tense, but I can picture it. And I'm just, I can almost cut the tension with the knife through the TV of what I'm watching. And I'm just like, this is fucking tense. These two are about to kill each other. Someone's going to just snap.
Yeah.
But I don't know how. I don't know when. And it's going to be really kind of cool to see how this wraps up. And I think it wrapped up in a way that was very satisfying on a lot of levels, but also just like, wow, I wasn't expecting that way to end. I was expecting this, but not like that.
No, for sure. And again, I'm making a movie about the early 80s. So like, if you think about that time frame from 75 to 83, 84, think about how those movies ended. Think about how Dog Day Afternoon ends. Think about how The Godfather ends. Think of, it's not how the movies end today. You know what I mean? Those movies, they gave you this weird sense. They wanted you, filmmakers back then wanted you to go after the movie, go sit down at a coffee shop, have a cup of coffee, talk about the movie. Nowadays, movies are, when they end, you turn off your Netflix and you go to fucking bed. You know what I mean? It's not the same.
Yeah, no, and I mean, the age of the critic is whatever, no, but nobody really sits and discusses films. Nobody sits there and discusses.
No, and that's what it is. You got to remember, like, what is film? It's art.
It is.
And there are people who love my movies, and then there are people who fucking hate my movies. there are people who think I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then there are people who think I'm a piece of shit, and I couldn't make a good movie. And that's great. I love being either black or white. You know what I mean?
That's the same as the podcast world, Vic. There's people that love us and people that hate us.
Yeah, so like if I just wrote in the gray area where like, he's all right. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be that guy.
That's sitting on the fucking fence. That's playing both sides. At the end of the day, do you, and wherever the fucking people land, they land. If the people hate you, guess what? They're hating you not because, in this case, they're hating you not because of you. It's because you produced something that was so vile that they're fucking disgusted. And if that's the case, well, guess what? You probably succeeded on some level with that. If they love you for the cinematic geniusness, then you succeeded in that. Either which way, you've succeeded.
Yeah, and you know what? And the thing is like, once you read about me or my movies, like you have the opportunity to not watch. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to watch my stuff. I can tell you how many times,
I can't even find half of your shit. Never mind. Well, it takes me effort.
Well, that's the best part. For the longest time, the August Underground movies were very hard to find. And if you wanted to buy a copy on eBay, you're paying over $200 for a copy of it. Now that they're Unearth put them out, you can get them on Amazon or Walmart. You know what I mean? But
yeah, there's a few little places, but I looked at that other one.
The films, that mystique is so important for art.
That made it almost like I said, something hard to get. If this is such a bad movie, then it makes sense that it's hard to find. Then this is even more taboo. This is even more rare. When you hear, movies like Cannibal Holocaust are saying banned in all these countries, it sounds badass.
Yeah.
That just sounds like, oh my God, there's got to be something disturbing. I mean, people don't realize that, you can get movies banned for the stupidest shit, but some of it is even bad. Some of it honestly isn't even that bad. Like, some of the rating stuff is like, Again, we're watching, you're living in an age where, like you said, you turn on the news and someone just got shot in the neck. And now you want to tell me that I can't add these two scenes to a movie without fucking changing a rating. It's like, change the news rating then.
Yeah. No, and that's, and each country has different rules and regulations, like I was arrested in Canada for the August Underground movies.
Were you?
Yeah. Going into Canada, they red flagged us and they arrested me on like 16 obscenity laws. And they detained me for, I was going up to do an autograph signing for Rue Morgue magazine. And they wouldn't let me take, after they called, the head of Ottawa to do a background check on me and all this stuff, they finally, they let me in, but I wasn't able to take any of my art in. And then, every other time going into Canada, I had such a problem. And I love Canada, dude. I have so many great friends in Canada, Rue Morgue magazine, the people.
And it's not even because you have a criminal record. It's just they don't like. It's just the horror and just they don't like it. And
they didn't want me to bring my American filth into their country. Same thing with Australia. They've seized movies in Australia and the Netherlands and all kinds
I see that. I can see that.
So, but that's just that comes with it. When you make any kind of art like this, it's up for interpretation, and countries have the rights to say yes or no if they want it in there.
I think we take for granted being in the U.S. that we have a lot of uncensored film laws. Like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that can be shown. Yes, there's stuff that can't, but for the most part, almost anything can. And they don't get banned like other countries, because there's a lot of stuff in other countries that get banned or watered down. They got to cut it out or cut it down and change the rating. I mean, especially and also in the U.S., you have that opportunity. It's not out of the question, especially in today's age, to get out of Hollywood, produce it independently. It's going to be a little bit harder. You're taking it out of pocket. You're finding investors. You're doing all this crazy shit. But then you're getting to put out the film that you want to put out. You don't have to listen to anybody.
Yeah. And that's, that's the way to go. I just wish I was able to get a little bit more money, because with a little bit more money, then I can get the actors that I want, and I can get the equipment and the locations and things like that.
Would you have changed stuff in Underground if you had more money to make it?
Well, in August Underground, I didn't know what I was making. You know what I mean? Like, I knew I was living in that farmhouse, and the movie takes place mostly there and in the basement and all around. I was using like practical locations, but it all depends on the story that I'm telling. The scripts that I have written now, of the projects that I want to make are definitely a lot bigger. It's hard to go back to that period of time again. Like I said, I was like 24 years old.
Yeah, your mind's in a totally different space, and, cinema's in a different spot.
Sure, and and two, I didn't mind eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches all the time, but now I got a mortgage and car payments, and I like to go out to dinner and buy what I want to buy and shit like that, and I work hard for that. And making underground movies, there's not a lot of money in it. It's a way for me to express the art, but I want to be able to do both.
I think you became a little. I mean, I think in your case, you expressed the art, but you also became a little bit of a legend in that genre because it was, nobody had ever seen anything like that. They're saying what In a Violent Nature is the first, movie from a killer's point of view. That's not really true. You did it yourself. That was you. Like, That movie was through the killer's eyes. There's somebody filming and laughing, and there's somebody killing, and that is it. There's nothing else to it. And I mean, like you said, I don't think, you probably could never go back, but I was just wondering if at the time, if you had an extra 10,000, was there things in your head that you were like, I want to put together?
Especially effects wise, I would have loved to have been able to show more and pull more stuff off gag wise with some of the effects. I remember like in the first early drafts of like August Underground script, like, doing like really great beheadings and stuff I was able to do in August Underground's Penance. We had a little bit more money to throw out the materials. There's that great scene in August Underground's Penance where the body's on the table and like I saw into the arm and the blood squirts out of it and I cut off the head and you see all the guts on the table. That shit's brutal. And if I would have had the money during the first one, like I could have done stuff like that. I just didn't have it at the time.
No, and and honestly, I think it in that kind of a film, the effects, obviously you're using practical effects, which makes all these movies really important. If you used any VFX, it would have killed the illusion right off the bat. But honestly, having a little bit less gore in that first film, having a little bit less of the kill scene, not seeing as much of the torture, not seeing as much of it, just seeing bits and pieces, but also seeing, this filthy basement, this filthy atmosphere.
Yeah, like you could smell it. You know what I mean? Like I wanted you, when you're looking at the movie, like I want you to be able to smell what that basement smells.
Oh, I could. And having a little bit of that, less of it, and not using the effects made it even more terrifying, almost like real. If, someone doing this isn't going to try to like, oh, let's get a really good kill scene for this camera. They're just going to do what they're doing.
Yeah. And, and it's kind of like what Spielberg did in Jaws. The shark wasn't working, so we had to think outside the box. I had to do the same. I had to do the same thing. It was like, oh shit. Well, I don't have the money to do this. What do I need to show? What do we need to show? Okay, I need to make sure that I have a hammer that looks really good. That is rubber. I need to make sure that the blood looks really good and like the nipple effect is going to look killer. You know what I mean? Like the few set pieces that needed to be done had to be perfect. And I'm so glad that in August Underground there are those scenes where it's just like, wow, when you do see some of that gore. People are always like, oh man, August Underground is so bloody and gruesome, and it's like, no, it's not. It's kind of
it's not. I wouldn't say it's bloody and gruesome. It's violent, but it's not bloody and gruesome.
No, it's nihilistic. It's Gunnar Hansen was a friend of mine, and he was one of the first people to see August Underground. And, I remember him telling me, he's just like, Fred, he's like, August Underground is your Texas Chainsaw Massacre, man. He's like, I felt the same way walking out of the first time I saw Chainsaw, the way I felt walking out of your movie. Like, it's just so raw and unforgiving. And that was like the greatest compliment I've ever gotten my entire life. That and the Roger Watkins, who directed Last House on Dead End Street, who said August Underground is like the Citizen Kane of horror movies.
Jesus, that's impressive right
These
there.
are
But
like,
it is. I mean, I have to say that you've done a great job, not just with the August Underground series, but I mean, like I said, even in your mature self, putting out, I would call it a psychological horror. I would call the final interview, because you're not seeing a lot of this visual terror. You're not seeing the murders. You're not seeing the serial killer stalking his prey and killing people. You're not seeing all that, but you're feeling the tenseness of the words. You're feeling the uncomfortability that these two are having, and you're putting yourself in the position. This guy's calling this guy's friend all these names. He's baiting him. He's calling him all this shit. He's saying all this, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. Like, what the hell's going on here? What am I watching?
that's,
Who's the bad guy here? Again, asking yourself
yeah.
all these questions.
No, and again, it's the final interview was made out of desperation because I wanted to make a movie. I got really close to making something a lot bigger, and the money fell through. And I was like, holy shit, man, it's been a long time since I made a movie. Like, I need to make something. So the idea of just doing this interview was something that I'm like, I can do for pretty cheap. And then of course it grew when when the script came back, and I'm like, man, I need to have really good actors, or this could be a failure. You know what I mean? Like, the acting is so key in this movie.
Yeah.
And for me to trust, some inexperienced person because I couldn't pay them would ruin such a great dialogue and a great story. So, I had to put up the money to get Granger and to get Diane and to get Damien and get it the way that I wanted to do it. Because, again, the movie's 3 talking heads for an hour and a half, and
It is, but it doesn't feel that way.
if it's not executed properly, it's going to bore you and take you out of it. And that's where I really believe that my craft came into breaking, telling the story and having the audio switches and the different looks of the film.
It
kind
did.
of make it happen. So,
'Cause, I mean, I'll be honest, like I said, I watch a lot of horror movies. Sometimes I watch horror movies to go to bed. Sometimes I wake up and put on horror movies. There's no set time. I enjoy horror. It's my comfort zone. A lot of times, if I'm having a stressful day or I get in an anxiety spot or whatever, I throw on a horror movie. A lot of the horror movies, I'll watch like 15, 20 minutes of it, and then I'm off and doing something on my phone, or I end up getting in my head and I want to go do my own project or something else or whatever it is. I have to say, when I watched the final interview, I was enthralled, and I had to actually watch the whole thing in its entirety. And I wasn't able to like turn it off and pause it and go watch. And there's only a very few movies that have me like grabbed like that, where I don't end up watching it over the course of 3 days and just sit there and watch it.
yeah.
And I had to know how it ended. I had to know where these characters are going. I had to know what was going to happen. Was this going to happen? Was that going to happen? The clock's ticking. This is going on. You think of all these scenarios that could happen, and you're seeing this interview and you're listening to it. And at some points, you're almost feeling sympathy for this guy. The serial killer in this movie, you almost feel at certain points sympathy for, because he has a story that is like, oh shit, he's almost, part of his, it's his environment, man. He didn't choose this life. This life threw him there. He's been dealt this rotten hand. He's lost his parents. He lost all this shit. It's very different than, your August Underground killer, where you're just repulsed by this dude.
Yeah.
And so it almost puts you in a twist. And then you got this guy baiting him, and you're like, well, I kind of hope he gets pardoned. I hope that the mayor pulls through.
Yeah. Well, I try that with all of my films. And eventually when you get a chance to check everything out, maybe we could do this again and we could talk about those other films, because I always try to grow as a filmmaker and try different things. I'm not afraid to fail because I want to get better. You know what I mean?
No, there is no failing. I mean, yeah, you can put out some that's not successful, but it's still a learning process. And if you can learn from something, it's definitely not a failure. You've learned.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, again, like I taught college for 3 years, so I'm used to trying to pick people up and help them express themselves and to create And again, I'm a huge Frankenstein fan, so I am a mad scientist, and I need to make my monsters, and I need
So
to.
who knows? Maybe when I start doing my films, I'll be racking your brain for ideas of how should I execute this and how should I execute that? Because I mean, everybody needs practical effects.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, I mean, I do. I like I said, I have plans. I did locate a few of your films that I, besides those four, and then the latest one. Some of them are in my Amazon cart. Some of them are pricey. One of them was like $100 and something dollars. I'm just like, you know what the hell with it. It's got to be good if it's that expensive. But
It's just because there's not many made.
no, and that's fine too. I'm a collector of stuff. So if
Yeah.
I have something rare, shoot, maybe I'll ship it to you, have you sign it. You can send it back and it'll double its value and it'll go in my wall of horror. But I do like I said, to watch film, and I do like to have physical copies, even though I end up, I still buy all the streaming services. I know your films, like those three, and what is it? I'm gonna keep screwing up, but Masthead.
Masthead, yeah.
Yeah, they're all streaming on, some network that just started streaming all these,
They
crazy, crank up, and so. I know it's streaming on there. I can watch it for free. I have that on my TV, but I still went out, still bought the DVDs with the Blu-ray, just so I can put it inside the damn player.
Yeah, and I want you to see all the special features that they're jam-packed with hours and hours of behind the scenes and showing you how we make the character, how we do all the special effects, like what it was like being on set. And and that's what I hope for an aspiring filmmaker like yourself is like. That's what. Buying DVDs, but when they first came out and you were able to see the makings of these movies, it was like so inspiring to see how it was done.
Yeah, even if they were like on like the Hollywood side and they, like Terminator 2 or something. Yeah, okay, it's out of your budget, it's out of your range. But you still get to look at like, oh my God, this is the big leagues, this is how they do it. And it's like, okay, how can I scale this down to fit my budget? How can I,
that's the thing is like first and foremost is you need to have a great script. Like you need to have a great script because if it's your skeleton, and if your script is weak, your skeleton's not going to stand up. And then it's all about putting meat on the bones. That comes from your actors. That comes from you positioning the right people for the right jobs. On the final interview, like I said, the movie was shot in 9 days, and my crew is 12 people. I had a producer. I had two producers. I had a production designer. I had a special effects artist. I had a sound man. I had a cameraman. I had a camera assistant. Who doubled as a lighting person. Things like that. I hired the local culinary school to cater all the food because you got to keep people fed.
Yes, you do.
You got to make sure people are fed because it keeps the energy and everything going. And like I said, if you plan out your movie and you trim the fat, you'll move a lot faster. You'll get things done, and you'll be efficient. And your crew will thank you so much for it because it's not like I'm standing around for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, waiting. Nobody wants to have to wait. Everybody. Like, what is time is money. First of all, let's be real.
What's Fred going to do today? He's going to sit here and look and maybe we should have the camera here, or maybe we should have the camera there. No, you should know where the camera's going to be. You should know.
At the end of the day, time is money when you're doing this stuff. Every minute costs, especially if you're on a location that you paid for. It's like,
for sure.
Like you want to get everything done.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, it was very interesting to just see something that was almost night and day as far as story-wise, storytelling-wise, and even it's saying you got two very different types of horrors. But it goes to show your range as, a director of what you can do. It's not a one-trick pony. Hey, I can make the serial killer, but you know what? I can also make you sit here and get invested in people for an hour and a half and care what these, people are talking about.
Yeah.
And
well, I'm glad you enjoyed the art.
No, I do, and I noticed that you got that special edition. I think am I right? Did I read that it actually comes with the soundtrack too?
It does. It comes with a Blu-ray, the DVD, and the soundtrack. It comes with a little evidence pack inside with some amazing artwork, and it's a very cool piece.
Yeah, I need to, like I said, I'm going to order that. I'm going to order the lobby cards. I'm a sucker for these kinds of things because it brings me back to a time of physical media. I'm stuck on magazines. I still like to go to the bookstores and buy the horror magazines. I still buy the Blu-rays. I still buy, they seem to come back, but records, a lot of the stuff is coming back on record. So I end up buying a lot of the horror scores on records and stuff.
Yeah, I'm a big record collector myself. If you like follow me on Facebook or Instagram, I do a Fred's record of the day, a new record every day. What I'm listening to.
No, it's awesome. But that's the world that I grew up in, that physical media, actually,
Yeah. No,
holding it, feeling it. But not even that, just like there was something about, opening up a CD and like reading through the booklet, reading the lyrics, reading the dedication, reading the thank yous, seeing the artwork that was drawn inside these little pamphlets. The tapes had them too, other things, that's kind of gone now. When you buy an MP3, you buy a digital movie, you get no video box art, you get no cover art, you get no special booklet that comes with it. You get nothing.
Nothing. It's disposable. You know what I mean? It's just like, that's why it doesn't stick, and that's why people who collect movies on physical media are always I believe more of the intellectual cinephiles, because they're the ones that really take the time and focus, and because you're paying your good money for these, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, they're not cheap. I mean, and I bought some, pretty high collectibles ones. I bought, the Necromantic set there, the George Jorgensen stuff. I bought, a lot of the stuff from Arrow. I like to go after the limited editions because it does come with all the bells and whistles.
Oh, I know. I did too. I love, that Hitcher that came out. I'm the same way. I like to have my physical media, and
I just got that Mario Bava collection. Things like that. But like I said, I'm a fan of film. It doesn't have to be from this era. It doesn't even have to, what some people consider scary. Because, if you want to go back to those olden movies, they're not going to be scary now because we have such technology that almost makes the scares irrelevant. We got cell phones, we got GPSs and all this stuff. But, you like you said, you watch the lighting, you watch how it's done, you watch the cinematic mastery. I remember being in school, and I want to say English class did like a 3-month course on cinema in high school, and we'd watch different movies, and one of the ones we watched just for the film was Psycho, and they showed how he did all these wild shots that were just different for the time period.
For sure.
And that kind of got me sparked of that's into film, because I'm like, well, that's something different. This is a way of expressing yourself outside of the pen and paper. I've been known to draw and stuff, but there's music expression, and then there's film. And film is totally different because, you're painting. It's an empty canvas, but it's not an empty canvas. You can have it be empty, or you can start with, a location and fill in the blanks. You can start with a person and make everything around it. You can do so much in a cinematic movie, presence, in a movie that you can do similar to a book. You can just take the bare bones, or you can take something and change it completely, or it can be lifelike, it can be totally surreal, it can be anything you want it to be.
Sure. And just, use what you have. If you have access to a diner, make your movie in a diner. If you have access to the woods, make a movie in the woods.
Yeah, I live near a cemetery. I get almost free range to walk through there and film and do whatever. They allow me to go through there. So, like, when I do a lot of stuff and just film shorts, I try to use and utilize the cemetery as much as I can.
Sure.
And with the right lighting, it looks right. And, I blur out, a lot of the names on the stones, and then I do a lot of stuff. But, like you said, use what you got. I got some friends that, and family that own warehouses. If I can get over there, sometimes I'll film scenes over there. I'll do like promo shots or set up my green screens or do whatever. It is all, and I think that's what's cool about film. Sometimes, yes, I think some people get hung up. Yes, you want to put out this great, perfect product, but sometimes it's okay just to put it out. Just get it out there. knowing that it's not going to be the 100% perfect, but you've done everything that you possibly were able to work with to get it there. And I think that's the difference. You're not putting out a half-assed project. You've used all your resources. You know it can be better if you had more resource, but you still decide to put it out there and let it fly.
Sure.
And it takes guts to do that. There's a lot of people that, will shun people and say, oh, your movies suck, or this person's video sucks, or this or that. But then you notice that they've never put out anything in their life. They've never shared their creativity. They don't put themselves out like that. So it's like,
absolutely.
Well,
and that's why you don't shit on other filmmakers or other artists, man. It's art's subjective. You never know what they're working with or what they're going through, but you know what? They worked their ass off to make a movie. But my battery is going to run out, guys.
Okay, thank you. I do thank you. Just quickly before people can find you, Fred Vogel, Instagram, Facebook,
sure,
all that.
You go Fred Vogel on Instagram. I think it's like Fred Vogel 76 or _76, or just look for this handsome face. You'll see me there. And you can always go, of course, to Toetag, TOETAG.biz if you want movies from myself and Toetag. You can go there. And, of course, the final interview is www.thefinalinterviewmovie.com. And you can get the final interview there for a digital download for $10, or you buy it. And then I think if you buy the digital download, then you buy it, we give you that $10 credit anyway.
Yeah, you do get a credit, which is also very nice. And I'm going to put all that information too in the description on YouTube and such, so people can find that with ease. Because I do think there's a market for this, and again, you're doing great things, and hope to see what you're going to do in the future. I mean, I'm sure your movie making career is far from over, so I do look forward to seeing more Fred Vogel films. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was nice chatting with you about movies.
Thank you. Have a great night.
All right, guys. Take care.
Bye.
See, what a great guy. That's what I love about the horror world, Victor.
I just thought of a fucking awesome idea.
But no, you've seen him in the movie early. You've seen him doing all that brutal shit, and he's one of the nicest people in the world.
Yeah, you're right. But just this whole, the horror, you gave me a, what if I try to reach out, to international people that do horror? Like actors.
Well, yes. I mean, you've had great success with the horror world with the wrestling world internationally. Bring on some foreign directors. Bring on some foreign actors, foreign writers. You're trying to tell me that they don't watch horror movie in Finland? They don't, Germany? These countries all put out great and excellent horror films, just like the U.S. does.
And they probably would get some U.S. exposure.
I would like to see their films. I'm a film person. Like he said, I'm one of those intellectuals. I collect physical media. I like the special features. I like the bells and whistles. I like all that shit.
We can also call it killing the business worldwide. Killing heart.
Well, yes, killing the business worldwide is making a comeback. Folks need to understand that. And whether it merges with Horror Nights, whether it transforms, it's all going to come together. But, like I said, it's been another great night here for Horror Nights. And I do appreciate everybody tuning in, bearing with. I know you're watching the Facebook version. It will be on YouTube soon, and it will be edited. I'm going to actually throw a few scenes up and clips of the new film that he was talking about, as well as the intro and other such stuff. If you like the bells and whistles versions of things, then go to YouTube for it. If you like the bare bones interview, then, well, you're watching it right now here on Facebook. And I do appreciate everybody that checks this out. We do have more horror people coming on as we got more conventions coming on. And now with Victor saying, great idea. I think that's a great thing to do. Let's get into the foreign horror market. Let's invite people. Let's talk to people. Let's get known. And then who knows, Victor? Maybe we'll be making the next underground horror film.
And the fucked up thing about it all is I really thought when I brought up that idea, we were not recording anymore.
But you also have all the land you also have all the creepy ass land in Vermont to film on. So I could film like horror movies for days in your wooded areas.
Just fucking let me know.
Location,
Especially
location.
Right now, I have 2 properties.
You'll have females in the chicken coop.
Probably.
It'll only be for the scene, though. Don't worry. See, they were all friends. They were all actors. But honestly, watching that video today, didn't they look like pros?
Yeah.
I thought I was pros to work on camera and just, here you go. Because you do hear about that. You do hear about people just hiring hookers. WWE did it when The Godfather walked down. Those were all real hookers. They didn't hire models and they didn't use wrestlers.
No, because Vince was probably fucking them all in the back.
Maybe. Or that's just what was cheaper or they could afford. But thank you, everybody, for watching. It's been another great episode of Horror Nights. Stay spooky, everyone. We're out.
Peace.